Good afternoon. Welcome back to our fourth and final session of the day. I was chatting that as we were getting started here. And we are again on the essay writing topic for college applications. We have Janine Robinson joining us from California, and she has authored several books and has a website entitled Essay Hell. We're going to give you that information as well in the chat room feature. And we welcome you to join the site, but just follow along and get questions ready. And she, at any time, will take questions and definitely reserves a little time at the end to field any questions you might have. So at this time, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Janine. Take it away.
Okay, well, welcome, and just thank all of you for tuning in and taking the time. It shows me that you're ahead of most students and that you're already thinking about these essays and that you're looking for resources to help you write good ones. And you're at the right place. My personal background is journalism. I wrote for newspapers as a reporter, and I also was a magazine editor for several magazines. And I, in recent years, got my teaching degree for high school English. And about 8 years ago, when my daughter was in your shoes, a junior in high school, she got her applications and she was looking at the essay prompts, the questions that you address to write your essays. And she really was sort of freaked out. She didn't know how to think about them. And so I sat down and helped her a little bit. And what I realized is that a lot of the writing techniques, devices, tools that I use, especially for magazine writing, like feature articles, profiles, would serve so well with this type of essay. And so what I started doing was I started a blog where I wanted to share some of the writing advice and tips that I knew about and was learning about regarding these essays. And I started working with students and private counselors on these essays. And so I have a blog, and it's called Essay Hell. It is literally packed with tips and advice on these essays. That's all it is, college application essays. It's called Essay Hell. And you can put Essay Hell in your browser, and it should pop up. I'll show it to you here, or www.essayhell.com. Hang on a second. Just a little slow, hang on. No, that's not. Okay, there you go. Sorry. So anyway, this is my website, Essay Hell, and I write posts pretty frequently about different topics, timely topics. Because I've been working recently with the students from Texas, I thought I would take a look at your application for most Texas universities in Texas and many private schools, called Apply Texas. So I wrote a couple posts on how to think about those, mainly the three top essays that topic A, B, and C, they're called, that students have to write. But if you want to look for anything, you can just, here's the top of it. You could scroll down the right corner, and here's the index. So almost anything you want to know, you can click on. If you want to know more about admissions officers, what are they like? How do they think about essays? How do they decide? Choosing topics, all sorts of articles on how to do that. There's also what's called the Common Application, and I'll explain a little bit about that, but it has each of the separate prompts and posts, go into strategies about how to think about and answer those. And then there's even just sort of more general writing posts I've done about narrative writing mainly, which is a certain style of writing where you use, you write about an experience, and you use storytelling techniques. Like anecdotes, you use dialogue, you basically, you try to show more than tell, that type of stuff. So anyway, that's my blog, and you can go to that anytime. Basically, if you're just starting to think about college, the drill is that you will be, most likely, some of you won't need to write essays depending on what schools you're applying to, but most universities and private colleges require these essays. And the good news is, in the past, you used to apply to every college that you applied to, or university, you'd have to do a separate application and write a separate essay. In past years, they've consolidated that process. So 200 or more colleges and universities now use what's called the Common Application. And that is, it's a website, and you'll get more familiar with it because it's how you're going to put in your grades and your scores, but it's also where you're going to send your one main essay that you write for your common application. And the beauty is you only have to write this one main essay, and then it just goes to whatever schools you decide to apply to. The common application has 5 prompts. Prompts are just another word. It's sort of like a question or a topic that they are suggesting that you write about your essay. So they have 5. You pick one of these. The sort of the rules are you need to have it more than 250 words long, no more than 650 words. And generally what you're writing is called a personal statement. A personal statement is an essay that is about you. The goal of a personal statement is that a college application officer or admissions person could read this and get a sense of what you are like, about your personality, about your character. So it's the reason that you write these essays is that when you apply to a school, all they see are your grades, your scores, your extracurricular activities, and there's no, they don't get a sense of who you are as an individual. So this is a tool that you can use to set yourself apart from other students, to show why you're unique, or what unique qualities that you have and what you would bring to their campus. And it's also a trick to try to give you an edge in getting accepted, because if you could write an essay that makes an impression on them, you're more likely to land in the yes pile than the reject pile. The other thing about learning how to write these personal statements is that you also can use them, this whole approach, for writing, applying to scholarships. A lot of them require an essay like this, and so it's a little tricky to learn to write about yourself. Most students haven't done it at all, or if they have, they've maybe done it once or twice at the most. It's a different style of writing. A personal statement is not like most of the essays or assignments, reports that you've written in English class. You totally ditch the 5-paragraph essay, that sort of formal 5, your intro paragraph, your main point, your thesis, body paragraphs, conclusion, use words like hence and nevertheless. It's not that style of an essay. It's a lot more casual. You're writing about yourself. You use first person, I, we, us, and what the real trick is to use your personal stories and include those in your essay. So that's what my whole blog is about. And then I went on and I put together a little book that steps students through this process. It's a 10-step process. It's called Escape Essay Hell. And I also then, once I started having all these students, thousands of students, that I had their essays, I took the best ones and put them in another book. So there's 50 sample essays in this book. And then I wrote another book that is about the specific prompts and strategies for those. So, and I have a 4th book that is more about writing narrative, the narrative style, techniques, advice, tips on just how to write in a narrative style. And the beauty of it is that these books you now have access to. Gear Up now is going, and as well as an online boot camp writing course that I put together based on those 10 steps of putting together a personal statement or a narrative style essay for college applications. So Gear Up students, all you will have to do in the next few weeks or month or so, once it's launched on that site, is go to Gear Up, do your password, and there'll be a link to get to the Essay Hell online boot camp, and I'll show that to you. But once you go to that boot camp, you will also be able to access all 4 of those writing guides, which should be helpful. Let's see if we can. Here it is. So once you click on that, this is what you'd come to. This is the boot camp. It's pretty straightforward. You go to home, and there's a little descriptive content on each of the pages. But in essence, what it does is it walks you through watching 10 very short videos. There's an introduction. And then you get going on these steps. So each step has a video, and then there's also related handouts that it'll say, okay, after you watch this video, go to handout 3, and then you go to that related handout, and it'll be a little exercise or some additional reading or a list of tips. One's a sample outline. There's sample essays, all sorts of stuff. So I'm just excited that you will have this after this little session right now, where I'm just trying to download all this as much as possible about these essays. You can go back to this boot camp, and here in the library part are all 4 of those books that I just told you about. Here's the step-to-step guide, the collection of sample essays. If you're determined to write a good essay, you need to find out first what makes a good essay. There's definitely some things to do, things not to do. And I'll try to go over those. But one of the best advice I can give is to read sample essays. If you read what other students have written, there's really no better way to get an idea of this style of writing and how it's very different from formal academic essays that you've written in English class. Just to see how they do it, how you can see the tone, the language that they use, everyday language. And also, you can go through these sample essays, and you'll be surprised by all the topics, the different topics that students have written about that have turned into great essays. There's one student that wrote about he loved people's junk. He wrote his whole essay. He got into New York University, NYU, fabulous university, by writing his essay on how he loved to go to garage sales and up in his grandmother's attic and collect other people's junk. And I'll go more into that about how he was able to take an everyday topic like that and spin that into an essay that really showcased something meaningful about him. But I just think I'll be telling you just different tricks and tips, but when you see them in action that I think they'll make more sense. So let's see, I wanted to share one of these with you. So here's a sample college application essay. What I do with the students is I tell them, okay, the main things you want with your essay are, 1, to grab the attention of the admissions official. You have to understand that they have piles of these applications and essays that they have to read. And so sometimes you only have a few seconds or a minute or two to hook them. Otherwise, they're on to the next one. So it's very important at the beginning to grab your reader. And the approach that I like to have students try is, instead of coming up with a catchy one-sentence sort of cutesy first line, to just instead think of a real-life moment or incident or something that happened to you, and use that little mini story at the beginning of your essay to hook your reader. because stories are powerful. We all love them. They get us in so naturally. So here's a sample essay of a student that did that. In a nutshell, and my whole course will step you through this, but in a nutshell, what I walk the students through is the idea of, one, start by thinking of your couple of what I call your defining qualities or characteristics. So what it does is, instead of trying to pack everything about you, your skills, what makes you great, into your essay, which results usually in a pretty boring general essay, I think it's much better to pick one quality that you have that sort of is defining of you, or a characteristic. Like maybe you're a very creative person, maybe you're a very imaginative person, maybe you're a problem solver or a leader. You could be resourceful, like the student that wrote about how he likes to collect people's junk. The quality that he's showcasing there is he's a scrappy guy. He's resourceful. He's good at making something out of nothing. So in his essay, instead of saying all the great things about himself, he says something that's sort of true or defining about himself, and writing a good essay about that. So it's focused. And if something is focused as opposed to broad and general, it's way more interesting. And that way you reel in those admissions officers. So this student, Brock, his quality, there's one video here that steps you through that exercise of trying to identify a couple of your defining qualities. But once you get one, then you brainstorm some little real life moment or incident that you can use in your essay to illustrate that quality. That is, you use that little moment as an example of how you are that way. So Brock said he wanted to be an engineer. So one of his defining qualities, he says he's a good problem solver. That was really a big part of his makeup. That's what he loved to do. It's a strength. So we said, okay, you're a problem solver. Can you think of an example of a time that you solved a problem? And when you're looking for these little stories, they don't have to be impressive accomplishments or shocking moments. A lot of times just a little everyday experience or incident. Usually they only take place over 5 minutes, 10 minutes are perfect. So he said, oh yeah, there's this time I got stuck in the tree. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of different. And that's a good thing. Different is good. And so he wrote this essay where he started by describing that moment or time that he got stuck in a tree. And he wrote it more like telling a story. And again, in this course, there's a video that talks about exactly how you take a real life moment and craft it into one of these moments. They're called anecdotes. It's just a fancy word. It just means a mini story that describes a real life moment or incident. So he started his essay. You can see it here. Dangling about 30 feet above the ground, I looked down on the entire neighborhood park with its rolling hills, vibrant green grass, and multiple tall eucalyptus trees. Buckled tightly in my brand new Diamond Mountain climbing harness, I admired my handiwork. My old blue and black braided climbing rope thrown over a branch held me aloft, while a slip knot I tied while hoisting myself up prevented my descent. After a few minutes, I decided to return to the ground, but realized my knot grew too tight for me to untie. I was stuck. So here he has described his problem, and it's sort of funny in a way. It's sort of amusing, which isn't a bad thing. He didn't try to make it funny, but it happens to be interesting. And then he goes on to explain the background of sort of his interests in knot tying, and which he then goes on to explain about how knot tying actually is problem solving. So then he talks about how he's stuck in the tree, but then he goes on to talk about how he got unstuck, and then also what he learned about himself in the process. It's sort of a life lesson. And that's the real meat of these essays, is you share some sort of thing that happened. And the best ones are ones that involve some sort of problem. And then you go on to how it made you feel, the steps you took to deal with it, but then what you learned about yourself and the world in the process. And that's your formula, really. And it's when you start reading personal essays, you'll see how that's how most of them are set up. And instead of starting with an introduction, I've always been the kind of guy who likes to solve problems and a thesis statement and then supporting paragraphs. Instead of explaining about himself, how he's a problem solver, he picked a time, this little time, to use to start his essay, to show the reader how he's a problem solver. So that's what this whole course does. It helps you identify your qualities. It helps you brainstorm your real life moments, and then shows you how to write them in a way that is engaging and to cobble that together into a rough draft, so that draft takes that moment, and then you can use it to take a look at yourself. Why am I like that? How did I get that way? And why does it matter? Why does it have value? And you will have focused, engaging, meaningful personal statement. Let's see. So what I want to do is, like I said, there are so many of these sample essays in this collection. And then there's also, at the end of each one, a little analysis where I went into why I think it worked, what didn't. So if you don't have to read the whole book, just read a few at a time, and I think it'll spark ideas for you. I mean, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, I could write about, trying to think, about how one guy was a 6'7", 300 pounds. He wrote about that, being a gigantic guy. And actually, he didn't just write about being gigantic. He wrote about the problem that everybody assumed he was mean because he was so big, and he was not mean. So, there you can go through here and go, oh, well, maybe I could write about how I'm 5'4" and have a size 10 foot. Some quirky thing about myself. A lot of the topics are not about your accomplishments, but the best essays often are about little parts of yourself that are different, that nobody else has. They can be a phobia, an obsession, they can be, and they can also be things that have happened to you, something in your background as well. Students generally fall into two camps. Some students have had momentous things happen to them in their life. They've lost a parent. There's been financial hardship. There's a sibling has some issue. They're autistic or blind. And so students that have had to deal with things like this, I advise them to take a shot at writing your personal essay about that, because it can't help but have defined who you are in some way. Because by dealing with something intense like that in your life, you can't help but have learned a lot about yourself and probably developed some quality in yourself, and that it's a perfect thing to show a college that that's how you are. And it sets you apart because your experience is always unique. So we get the idea that the goal of these essays is to stand out, and that you want to make that impression. But one of the best ways is to look for your real life stories. What I want to show you is one of the videos here to help get you started brainstorming your own stories. Let's see. So you'll see if you're in the boot camp, you want to find those defining qualities I was telling you about. Well, you can watch the video right here about your defining qualities to see what you're made of. What are you? Are you a neat freak? Are you clumsy? Are you really imaginative? Are you ambitious? So that you can collect a couple of your defining qualities. And then you go on to this video, helps you think of those times or little moments in your real life that illustrate or examples of whatever quality you decide to write about. And here's one I want you to watch. on finding a great topic. The other really key thing that I talk to my students about when you're looking for those little stories is to look for a time that involved a problem. Because if you can think of a time you had any kind of problem, that is a story. That's the definition of a story. You have a character in conflict. You have a character and something goes wrong. Something bad happens. If you think of movies or books, anything, that's what makes stories. So I really encourage you, when you're trying to think back over your high school years of interesting things that have happened to you, try to think of ones when something went a little sideways, when there's a problem. So here's a video on finding these topics. And once you find a topic to write about, a little story, and you know what it is you want to show, what quality you want to showcase about yourself, the rest is pretty easy. So it's worth spending the time brainstorming to find that topic.
You've now identified your defining qualities and characteristics and brainstormed some moments or experiences from your past that illustrate them. Now let's learn if they'll make a great topic for your college application essay. Before we list all the topics that don't necessarily make great essays, let me say that almost any topic can make a great essay. However, some are far more difficult to write about than others. So why make it more difficult on yourself? One of the most common mistakes students make in their essays is to try to pack all their accomplishments, talents, skills, and other impressive feats into one essay. So don't even think about rattling off amazing things you've done, people you've met, or places you've visited. It's just way too broad and boring. And besides, bragging is no way to make friends. Above all, you want to be likable in these college essays. It's not so much that sensitive topics can be downers, but powerful topics can be challenging to write about. If you handle them well, they can make amazing essays. My main advice is to focus on what you learn from these challenging experiences. If you experience a huge loss in your life and it completely turned your world upside down and changed you in a big way, you almost can't help but write about this in your essay. I've read many poignant and effective essays about personal challenges and tragedies and intense issues, and if nothing else, they show your grit like nothing else. Sports. This is a red flag topic. The thrill of victory, agony of defeat, it's been done, it's dull, avoid if possible, especially sports injuries. It's possible to write a great essay about a sport-related topic, but you must make sure you have something original to say about it and yourself. No one wants to read how you scored a winning goal or tore your ACL. Humor. A lot of students' stories or times from their past are quite entertaining and can even elicit a laugh from the reader. That's great, but keep your delivery straight and just tell what happened. If your story has funny parts, way to go. Self-deprecating humor where you poke fun of yourself seems to work best in these essays. Just don't try to write a comedy sketch. Do-good experiences. These can range from mission trips to Costa Rica to help build a church to tutoring underprivileged kids through local schools. Although these essays can certainly involve these experiences, and they are wonderful in themselves, the topic needs to be on a specific experience or time within that broader trip or program. Write about something that happened during a do-good experience, not just about the politics, religion. Important to use your common sense in terms of topics that have a high tendency to make people angry or upset because they do not agree with your opinion or it makes them uncomfortable. It's possible to write about these topics, but just be aware that they're loaded. Illegal or scandalous behavior. Use good judgment. Drug use, sexual activity, cheating, arrest, or jail time. Even if you stop doing these illegal or unethical things, it's still not the best idea to bring them up here. It is possible to write a great essay on these provocative topics, but you must focus on how you changed and what you learned. Like I said before, the best topics come from the everyday or mundane. Start with the ordinary, then say something meaningful about it. Also, be on the lookout for a twist or irony in your topic. See if you can find a topic that has something unexpected about it, a little surprise. It's ideal when your spoke something about you that they didn't know already, or even better, something that they would never expect. A twist is often an irony or something that is the opposite of what you would expect. Often this is a chance to reveal something about yourself that was not included anywhere else in your application. You can write a great essay about almost any topic. The trick is to find something that's interesting and unusual, so you spend the majority of your essay analyzing and reflecting upon it. The more sensational the topic, the more you should try to quickly shift into how you handled it and what you learned. Keep the emphasis of your essay positive and hopeful, no matter how intense your topic is. Before you move on to the next presentation, make sure and read handout 3 that outlines topics with red flags. Again, you can write a great essay about almost anything, but some are trickier than others. The big secret to writing a killer essay about a topic is to find a story within that topic. We will get started on that next.
Okay, so I hope that give you some ideas about just all the different types of things you can write about and still have it be a great essay. You know, if you do have something in your background that's intense that you've dealt with, write about it. The best essays are highly personal, where you open up about yourself, where you share something that happened, and you share how it made you feel, as long as you quickly then go into how you've dealt with it. You don't have to have solved the problem, whatever problem you started with, but share the steps that you've taken to deal with it, to manage it, to get through it. And then finally, again, there's that really juicy part where you want to then get reflective and analyze and talk about what you learned through that experience. Did it change you somehow? Did it help you think about something in a different way? Whatever your quality is, did it help you strengthen that quality? And then go into, why does that matter? Why is that a valuable thing for you in the world? So there's, again, in a nutshell, find a little problem, big or small, share it at the beginning of your essay, and then go into the steps that you took to deal with it, and then what you learned. Three simple parts of the essay. So what I want to do is share with you an essay where a student wrote about an intense issue, and I want you to see how you feel about that. Because when you're writing something, if you can connect with the reader, that is what's going to have an impact. It won't just grab their attention. It will also make you memorable. Let's see if I can find it. So I go into sample essays. And this was a student that had one of the most intense kind of things that you can face. And I'll just read this. I just want you to see how you feel when you read it, because if you make somebody feel something, they're not going to forget you. Every day after school, the first thing I would do was climb the stairs to my dad's bedroom and sit on his bed. He'd reach out to me and hold my hand while I told him about my day. If I got a good grade on a paper, if a teacher liked one of my comments in class, if I did 2 pirouettes instead of 1. He would smile and tell me how proud he was. Nothing made me happier, except the hope that I was also making him happy. The reason my dad was there for me almost every day of my life was that he was diagnosed with cancer and homebound since I was an infant. I learned about life from leaning on him and from him leaning on me, especially when my mom abandoned us because she couldn't handle his illness. I went to him for all my needs. If I had a problem with a friendship or a relationship, if I was scared of the dark, and especially if I procrastinated on a paper, he'd stay up late to help me no matter how sick he felt. In a way, he was my life coach, personal therapist, best friend, and dad all in one. But at the same time, he leaned on me. By the time I was 10, he could no longer eat. My mom stopped cooking. From then on, we no longer gathered around the dinner table. Not only did I have to learn to cook for myself, but to feed my dad through his feeding tube as well. Then during my freshman year, when my mom left us, I took over her responsibilities. I did the laundry, cooking, cleaning, and was my dad's personal nurse. Last year, after I turned 16, he had to go on oxygen 24 hours a day and was bedridden. I learned to pay bills, shop for a month's worth of groceries without spending more than $100, and drove him to his doctor's and physical therapy appointments. I could not have friends sleep over, stay out late, or bake cinnamon pancakes because the smell bothered him. When we had to put our house on the market, I raced home every day and frantically cleaned it for showings. I never talked to my dad about my own struggles or fears because I did not want to worry him. We were both trying to make each other feel better. My goal each day was to make him smile and relieve his suffering any way possible. But when he left this earth, I felt like my purpose was gone. I was lost. There's no one at home, no one to stay up late and help me with my homework, no one to help me decide what were the right colleges to apply to or what field or major I should consider. Even though my dad leaned on me for everything, I didn't realize how much I leaned on him until he was gone. Going back to school after he died was the hardest thing, but his passion for education motivated me to resume my classes and get the best grades I could despite my sadness. My dad put me first and I put him first. Now I'm learning how to put myself first. I now have a life coach, practice meditation, keep a daily journal, and have guardians who love and guide me. In meditation, I'm learning to have empathy and compassion for my mom, but at the same time respect my own needs first. I still think about my dad all the time and hear his voice encouraging me with his favorite saying, "It is better to be kind than right." I think my dad would be more proud not only that I'm pursuing my college dreams, but that I'm learning to take care of myself like he always took care of me. So this student, when I worked with her, her dad had died just a few months earlier, and it was still pretty raw. And I said, "Are you sure you want to write about this? Because some things are so overwhelming that it's hard to write about." But she was pretty determined that she wanted to write about this because she thought nothing else had shaped her more than this experience. And I just think that it's not as though she's whining or trying to get sympathy. You know, she basically shared her experience. She shared how it made her feel. She shared how she dealt with it. What was the problem? What was the problem, that she was dealing with? Her dad was dying. And so she shared that. She shared a little moment of them together. And then she went through how she dealt with it. She's pretty matter of fact. I had to do this, I had to do that. She included a lot of details, and that really helps an essay. Instead of talking generally, about how I had to help him, and she gave specific details. I took him to his appointments. I had bought groceries. So in this essay, I don't know about you, but I get a sense what it's like to be her. I get a sense of what kind of person she is. And I like her. And if I was at college, that's the kind of student I think would be outstanding person to have among my student body. So my point with sharing that one is that was a very difficult topic to write about. But I know a lot of students are dealing with things like this. I've had students, they've had a mother was a heroin addict, or they lost everything and had to move. Share those stories. Those stories, nobody's going to think less of you if you've had big problems in your life. Share the story, share how it made you feel, and what you've done to deal with it, and then you make it into a positive thing, so it's not whining, and it's not a weakness to share what you've dealt with. So, and on the other hand, if you haven't had something like that, you can definitely start with one of your qualities and think of the time when you developed it, and it can be a very mundane, simple little experience or incident that happened to you. I had one student, she was the star in all the school musicals, but instead of writing her article about how she played, the lead in some sort of play, she wrote about her obsession with karaoke. It was something that she just was passionate about, and she loved it. And that's an everyday little thing, and she wrote a great essay about it. So I know you have a good topic out there for yourself, and you just need to go back over time and think of those little stories where you came home and you couldn't wait to tell your mom or dad. You won't believe what happened. or one of your friends, you won't believe this. Those are those little stories that are fabulous to power your essays with. Let's see. I just wanted to go over the, I actually can't remember if I already went over the actual prompts with you or not. Do you guys remember? If I did. So let's see. The Common App prompts. So if you remember that I talked about that idea of identifying some sort of problem, and then you can use that as an example of one of your qualities. So look at, these are the 5 prompts for the Common Application. So if you're going to write your Common Application essay, you pick one of these 5 prompts to write your essay about. And when it comes to sending in your essay, all you're going to do is copy and paste your essay, and then there's a checkbox, and you'll just check whichever of these 5 your essay lines up with the best. So if you look like at number 4, what are they asking for? A problem. Perfect. You know, actually they just added that prompt last year, and I thought, wow, that's great, because that's what I've been talking about all along. Seems to, you know, help students write really interesting, meaningful essays. So that's a great one. And if you'll notice, it says describe a problem you solved or a problem you'd like to solve. It can be intellectual challenge, a research query, an ethical dilemma, anything that is of personal importance, no matter the scale. That means it doesn't have to be a big, humongous problem. It can be just a little one. And then explain its significance to you and what steps you took or could be taken to identify a solution. Another great one is the number 2. The lessons we take from failure can be fundamental to later success. Recount an incident or time when you experienced failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? What's failure? Failure is a problem. You know, you messed up. You made a mistake. Something didn't work out. I would resist writing about, like, if you failed a class or got a bad grade. For some reason, I just see a lot of those, and they frankly are boring to read about. So I think you could come up with a more snazzy failure. Something else that you tried and you didn't do well. And what's lovely about writing about a time that you failed at something is you automatically come across as a very humble person. It actually takes a big person to admit, you know, that you messed up with something. So if you start with a time that you tried something and you failed, we like you because we've all been in that boat. And so then you talk about the mistake or how you failed, and then you're poised to go into the steps you did to recover from that failure, and then what you learned in the process. I had one student wrote an essay. He was into making music. And so he, instead of talking about how he makes music and how he's so great at it, and somebody wanted to record one of his songs, he wrote about the time or the moment that he's sitting on the couch with his friends, and he just written this song, and he played it for them. And then in the end was, they all started laughing at him. And they told him, that's a terrible song. And of course he was crestfallen and devastated, but he shared that failure. But then he went on to say, you know what, even though that wasn't a good song, I was determined because I love music, and I did this, I learned this, I studied more about it, I practiced, I wrote 100 more songs, you know, and then you can go on to how you recover from it and what you learn. And what he learned was, you know, it's one of those life lessons where, you know, even if your friends don't think you're any good, doesn't mean that you're not good. And that a lot of times you just need to be persistent and keep up with it. So when I read that essay, he's very likable. Who hasn't been in that situation where you're really proud of something and you put yourself out there and then people laugh at you. You know, it hurts, but that's a way you connect with your reader. Another thing for students who are in Texas is that all the universities public universities and most of the state schools use another consolidated application called Apply Texas. And they have their own prompts. And for if it's helpful and you are doing that application, you can go to my blog, and I've written a couple posts on those prompts. So you might find that helpful. And it's depending on what school you're applying to, you write, you answer different ones. There's A, B, and C, and so I think you'll still find that the writing course helpful to writing those essays as well. So I don't know where we're at on time. So does anybody have any questions at this point? You know, sometimes you're sitting there and you're starting maybe to think of some of your stories, and you're thinking about, oh yeah, you know, I have this happened to me, or oh yeah, I wonder if my, you know, this particular passion or obsession would be something appropriate. I'd love to, you know, be a sounding board if you want. So think about that. And then I guess I just want to go over a few of my sort of main points, that if you get a couple of these main points, you will be way ahead of like 90% of these students out there that are struggling with these essays. If you get these core ideas. The first one is you do not want to try to just cram in all your best accomplishments. You don't want to try to impress with your essay. You don't want to write it like a 5-paragraph essay. You don't want to use big SAT words. You want to use everyday language. You don't use words like nevertheless and hence. That's formal. You want to write more like you talk. The more personal you are in your essay, the more effective. Personal means about your experiences, about sharing how you feel about things and opening up. That's personal, and that is how you connect in writing. Let's see. The idea of showing grit is excellent, and the bigger, kind of more challenging the problem that you share, the better chance you are to show your grit. And grit is raw determination. Colleges love to see that because that lets them know that you don't just have what it takes to get into a school. You have that fierce determination once you get in and things are kind of more challenging, that you're going to be able to get through those, that you have what it takes. So showing your grit is a great goal for one of your essays. And one of the keys to doing that is to think of a problem. And again, think of all the different ways there are problems. They come in all shapes and forms. Obstacles, mistakes, failures, a life change. You can move from one country to another country. There's just problems are everywhere. Another thing that's great, if you can happen to think of a time that shows the unexpected. And that's just that idea that was in that video you just saw of where you expect one thing, but something else happens. If there's something that a college would be surprised, an interesting thing to learn about you, that would be great to write about. Remember, they're just going to see your test scores, your test scores, extracurriculars, your grades in school. Those are all very generic things. They get no picture. They don't have a chance to get a sense of your personality. So that's where these essays, the more that you can show a little piece of what makes you tick, and what you're passionate about or how you feel about things, then it sets you apart from everybody else. And you don't have to be perfect. They're not looking for perfect. They're looking for individuals who love to learn, who are passionate about certain things, who have values. And again, the best way to write about that is not to say, I believe in this or I'm passionate about that, but to think of an example of a time when you were like that, and then go from there, why it's important. So the other thing I don't think again, I've done a couple of these today, so I hope I'm not being redundant, but it's important. I think a lot of the students of you all might be the first in your family to go to college. And I just want to say that if it's possible to sort of naturally mention that or work that into your essay, I would do that because you are golden. Colleges want you. They love the idea that a student is going to be the first, to go to college and study and take that step, that milestone. So I think it's something definitely worth mentioning. You don't have to, you can just sort of work it in that, I'll be the first in my family when I go to college. So let's see, what else? I do also want to just talk about deadlines here. Some schools actually have, if you're applying what's called early decision, where you get your application in early before the regular deadline, you will need your essay done by August. That's summer. So I highly encourage that you get going on these. And the best way is to set little deadlines for yourself where you say, okay, I'm going to have a little time on Sunday, so I'll set aside an hour or even a half hour. And I'll go to that Gear Up website, look at that, click on that course, and watch one of the videos and spend a little time brainstorming and write down some of my ideas and get going on these. And because you want these things off your back. They're a pain. You want to have a really good main essay for the Common App, personal statement. But after you write that, some of your other schools will ask for shorter little essays too. So there's a lot of work with these applications. It's not impossible, but you just want to stay ahead of them. Just tick off the list. And if you can get that essay done, you'll be way ahead of the game. So again, I guess anybody have any questions, or I can just keep going here. I can't hear you, Chris.
I say I don't see anything yet on the chat feature, but I'm sure they're listening in.
Oh, yeah.
Continue. If you have a few more minutes, we're just about to wrap up.
Sure. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think I also mentioned that these it's worth investing the time to sort of practice and learn how to write about yourself, because you'll be surprised in the future. You quite likely might be applying for scholarships. This is the kind of essay that you would write for a scholarship, personal essay about yourself, where you showcase a feature, something about yourself, a quality or characteristic. And if you use a storytelling style, it'll have a lot more impact. Those people will enjoy reading yours a lot better than the ones that write the sort of generic, formal essays. Let's see. I don't know if nobody has any questions. I just want to encourage you all to also, when you're working on these, reach out for help. Your parents actually, they know a lot of your fun stories and they remember them. And you can sit down and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I need a story that sort of shows something about what I'm all about. And I bet you they'll go, remember the time you did this, or that this funny thing happened. Those are the stories you're looking for. Just one of those. Those ones where you go, remember the time. It's that little time that you want to find and to share. And you also can have a great resource right there with your English teacher. I'm sure if you write a rough draft and you just say, hey, could you just read this and be a sounding board and tell me if I'm on the right track, or also when you're almost done, a lot of times your English teacher will help you just go through it and proofread it just for your basic grammatical and those kind of things. As you know, I'm sure you've heard over and over how writing is a process, that you don't just go, okay, I have my idea, I'm going to sit down and just write these perfect sentences and paragraphs and I'll have my essay done. Doesn't work like that. You have to brainstorm your ideas and then you get a little plan and outline, and there is a sample outline on the course. And then you just write, and you get your ideas out, and it's sloppy. It's not perfect. You don't have to spell things right. This is the idea is you're getting your thinking onto paper. You're expressing yourself, especially these essays, because you want to write a little more naturally, like things come out of your mouth, how you talk. Then you've got a rough draft, and it's supposed to be rough. It's supposed to be bad. You go back, and then you read it. That's the editing mode. You can get away from it for a while, come back, read it out loud. And then you'll hear, then all of a sudden you go, ooh, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe I need to work that a little bit. Or, oh my gosh, I already talked about that. So I'll take that out. Or how about I made this very general point about something. Maybe I need to back it up with some other examples to support it, or maybe I mentioned something, but I didn't really explain what it meant or why it was important. So you've read a lot. You'll be surprised. You'll be able to look at your essay after you've written it, and go back, and you'll be able to improve it. And there's a whole video in this course all about that process. It's called self-editing. If you do that, you are a writer. That's what a writer is. So I just encourage you to seek some help. You do it yourself, but also get some feedback. Like sometimes when you write about something really personal, you lose track of it. Maybe you got too graphic. Maybe you went into way too much detail. Somebody could tell you, you know what? You might want to take some of that out. That just seems to go a little too far. So that's why it's good to get different opinions. But I also have to give you a red flag on who you show your essay to or who you get help from. A lot of parents and even English teachers and counselors still might not understand that these college essays are different in nature from formal writing. So parents especially, I've had them go, oh my gosh, you didn't mention that you were on Model UN, and you didn't mention that you were an Eagle Scout, and you need to put that all in your essay. No, that will make it boring. I don't want to, you want to keep that story, that focus. And so you'll just gently have to tell them, no, you know what? I actually had this expert person who knows her stuff say that you really don't need to do that. They're going to see those accomplishments on other parts of your application. And, so sometimes you sort of have to be protective of your essay. And if somebody just is determined to take it all out, well, it's your essay. That's your essay, and it's up to you what you want to submit. So I just want you to get help, but there is a certain line where you have to understand what's the right help. And I actually have written about this on my blog as well. It's under the topics, and it talks about how to deal with parents. And so if you want more advice on that front. But the reality is teachers especially, and I actually had the privilege of working with teachers, your teachers, down there last fall, and they are excellent. And they not just know their stuff, they are passionate, and they know you a lot personally. And so I just think you're very lucky that you not only have these resources, but you have teachers that are so knowledgeable, and also just they're passionate, which not everybody gets that. So you're very lucky. So all I can say is don't freak out about these, and get a plan, do your homework, right? And just set some time, and you'll be done before you know it, and you'll be out of essay hell. That's the goal.
Great conclusion to the final statement.
Yes.
I love that, Janine.
Get out of essay hell. Okay, so good luck, and thanks for letting me talk to you today. It was fun. So.
Very valuable, very beneficial, and I again thank you for your time. students, teachers, once again, I have recorded all 4 sessions. I hope to have them all ready. I've already recorded and downloaded 3 of them to YouTube, so I just have this final session to work on, and I will be emailing it out to your Garrett facilitators. So if you would like links to these sessions to show to other classes, etc., please contact your local Garrett facilitator at your campus, and he or she can help you with that information so we can continue to spread this message. It's a very valuable one, and as Janine said, many folks out there, whether it's parents or otherwise, don't understand, and you're so right. They want to glorify all the wonderful accomplishments, but this is not that kind of essay. And so I think she pressed that upon you. If not, revisit this. Maybe you weren't listening, but that is the major point to take from all these 4 sessions. So that's a wrap right now. It's a little over 3:30. So once again, those 45 minutes bled to about an hour each time. And I thank you. Again, your passion definitely was through all your.
You have good listeners there.
And I appreciate that, and great stories. And I think just, like some of them were saying earlier, the sample essays are just golden, to see what other students are doing, to kind of give them a framework. I did speak to Norma briefly to find out that you mentioned the website. We're talking about myregion1.org, and we're getting that information uploaded and working through that over the next few weeks. So we'll eventually have a link on that website, which is the Students Online Portfolio. And so we will share that information out as it becomes available as a resource tool for all of our students here in the Valley.
Excellent. Really lucky.
All right, I will let you go and get back to your regular life, and thank you again, Janine, and I look forward to touching base again, and like I said, maybe we can work on some type of professional development for some of our other teachers that haven't been fortunate enough to visit with you in person or via.
Love that. Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks again. I'll stop recording.